Having a medical education is essential to maintaining our health, as it's the pillar that holds the healthcare industry in tandem. So what are the requirements of modern medical education? What are the challenges facing those involved in the medical teaching? And how can we solve or face these challenges? To answer all these questions, I'm so honored to have our guest today, Professor Ali Mahrous, Professor of Otology and Neurology, and he is the chairman of ENT department at Al-Azhar University in Cairo. He's also a respected consultant for ear, nose and throat with 15 years of experience in England. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you very much indeed for your kind invitation. It's a great pleasure to be with you in your respectable program concerning medical education. But before embarking on answering your questions, I would like to declare that there is no financial interest to be disclosed, nor any other conflicts of interest. And I'm here to present my personal views, which has nothing to do with the official position I hold in my institution in Cairo.
Thank you, Professor Ali, and it's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And first of all, I want you to tell me more about the importance of medical education. Why is it important and why we should really care about it?
Medical education underpins the healthcare industry, and healthcare industry looks after the people of a particular community or country. And without a proper medical education, there would be no good healthcare system. And people may ask why, as a government or as any organization, why would they fund medical education? I have to say to you here that medical education is meant to keep the people in any particular community as healthy. And to be healthy means to be productive, means that you are going to be economically contributing to the tax payment, which in the end leads to prosperity of a particular country. And that is why medical education is very important for the development of any country. And I take this opportunity to say here that people think of medical education is that we are taught to cure the ill patients. But in fact, there is a major chunk of medical education about the preventative medicine, which is to prevent people from getting unwell. And I think that is as equally important as the curative medicine, if you like.
This is really impressive because maybe recently after the pandemic and COVID-19, everyone is really care about the preventative medicine and how can we prevent people at the beginning from gaining any pandemics or diseases that could be really have effect not only on people's health, also on the economy, also in the country. So thank you so much for highlighting this point. Let's move to the other point, which is, what is modern medical education?
Modern medical education has really what I like to classify it into 5 pillars. So the first pillar of medical education depends on the medical student. The second pillar is the tutor. The third is the curriculum. The fourth is the assessment process. And the last but not the least is the environment in which all these parameters function. And I'm going to talk about each one in turn. The first one is the medical student. Now, potential medical students have selection criteria in different parts of the world. And I think the most notable one is the achievement of high marks in the secondary school, which is the A level basically. And the majority of medical schools all over the world would actually require A+ in biology, in physics, and in chemistry. And I think that is the cornerstone of selecting medical students to be enrolled into medicine. Having said that, I am acutely aware that there are different parts in the world and there are different universities, particularly the high-rank universities. They would have other selection criteria, which in major part would include extracurricular activities. And it's very subjective. And I have to say to you here, Hab, that in the developing world, when there is a subjective way of assessment, I think it leaves a lot to be desired for. And I think probably if we leave it as such, as being the only selection criterion, having high marks, I think that would minimize the bias in selecting medical students. Now, medical students, they really need to be acquainted and to be well counseled before enrollment into medical schools. And I think that's probably the responsibility of some organizations in the community, to let them know about what exactly entails to be a medical student. And I think that is something that probably we will touch on later on in this interview.
So before moving from the student part and the student pillar, because it's the most important pillar, I think, in the whole process, because they are our future doctors and future tutors for the next generations. If they want to pursue a successful career in medicine, and you have more than 30 years, I think, of experience in this field. So from your point now, and after teaching, I think, hundreds and thousands of students in the university, what would you advise?
Well, my advice to medical students, or to potential medical students who have not yet gone into medical school, I think, if I may, is that they really need to have a real, genuine passion to the medical profession. That is the crux that I would really emphasize here. Otherwise, if you choose medicine because of like the glory of social status or for any financial reward, I don't think you would have made the right choice, because medical profession would require a lifelong commitment, patience, perseverance, and a lifelong learning as well. And I don't think anyone would not have the real, genuine passion, would be able to incorporate this in his life routine since enrollment into medical school until they retire.
Yes, exactly. And from students to the professors, and you said that the tutors are the second pillar in this process. How do you think this pillar is really important, and what is the role in the medical education?
Tutors in medical school, is an essential pillar. And by tutors, I mean the assistant lecturers, associate professors, and professors. Tutors, they really have to be knowledgeable, they have to be skilled, and they have to have the right attitude towards the subject that they teach. These are the essential components of a good tutor. Having said that, I think there are other aspects that are, again, indispensable for being a good tutor. One is the communication skills, because a good tutor is a good communicator, because you are communicating all the time with your students, and you need to have the ability to impart the information onto them in a proper way. And not just the communication skills, but they really need to have this, what I would call it, social aptitude or social acumen, so that they would know how to deal with disruptive students, for example, in the class. They need to know how to deal with bereavement, for example, in some of the students. And I think that is a skill that is really required. In addition to the communication skills and the social aptitude, I think the tutors, they really need to be acquainted with the computer technology, information technology, because you really need to have this. If I am presenting in a lecture theater, is completely different from presenting in a tutorial or seminar or bedside presentation, if you see what I mean. So I think being acquainted and being versatile and keeping abreast with the new in all aspects is mandatory for tutors to be excellent at their job.
But I think you also told me that besides all these very vital and important skills, the mindset is also lies in the heart of this process, because they should have a mindset of understanding that, as you said, there is a link between economy and the healthcare sector. And so how do you think professors should also have this mindset when dealing with the students in the medical education?
As I said, it's the minds. If you are passionate about the profession, then you would have the right mindset. You would have the right attitude. You would know why I'm teaching them in this way. What is my ILOs, which basically stands for intended learning objectives. Because whenever we, as tutors or as professors, whenever we teach, we really have a curriculum that has intended learning objectives. And we need to achieve these objectives based on the vision and mission and the goal of that particular institution.
Great. So what are the other important pillars in the modern education?
The third pillar, which I mentioned earlier, is actually the curriculum. And the curriculum is actually the most dynamic of all the 5 pillars that I have mentioned. Because the curriculum basically is the binding agreement between the student and the tutor. And it is also the driving force for a change. And here I'd like to take this opportunity to say this. In the past, when I was a medical student in the 80s, we used to have really very stable, fixed curriculum. That is difficult to change because there wasn't a lot of information coming out. Now we are facing a real problem, which is to do with the abundance of information that we are getting on a daily basis. And if we were to change the curriculum, we probably need to change it every 6 months, which is not really practical. That is why, with the new curriculum, we really rely on the students themselves to be self-educated, which we call self-directed learning, problem-based learning, and what have you. So because of this challenge of abundance of information, we need to change the curriculum to actually allow the students to search for answering the questions, to actually look it up, to teach themselves, and to prepare before the course itself, so that they would actively participate. It's very similar to the Chinese saying, which, don't give me a fish, but teach me how to fish. And I think that's probably what we are after, is to allow the students themselves to be able to keep abreast and updated with the new, and search the internet and the information technology, and be able to help themselves. And we steer them, we direct them. But it's not like in the past. We used to spoon feed the students. That is not anymore, and it is actually active participation of the medical students that lies at the heart of the medical education.
Great. So students, professor or tutors, and curriculum. What are the other 2 important pillars in the modern medical education?
The 4th pillar is to do with the assessment process. We cannot assess or examine a student without actually having taught them something. So you need to teach and then you assess. And the link between the two is the curriculum. So you have a curriculum, you teach through that curriculum, and then you assess based on what you have taught in the curriculum. So the assessment process, we used to be very subjective in the past. We used to have like essay questions, which is a very long questions. And we used to have really, like the professor would speak or assess through talking to the students, asking questions. But nowadays, it has become actually much more objective. The objectivity comes from, for example, having multiple choice questions now, which is actually being marked by a machine, which we call bubble sheet, for example. And that is to do with the objectivity of assessment. In addition to being objective, is actually the questions that we actually put to the students, they have to be graded. You have like difficult questions, intermediate questions, and easy questions, so that you would be able to tease out the high achievers from the less ones. And as again, in the end, it is actually being just and being fair and being able to achieve what you want to achieve, which is the ILOs, that is the intended learning objectives.
Professors yet play a wider role in the teaching and in the medical education field, from research to community service. So if you can elaborate more on this role and its importance.
That's an excellent question. I think the role of professors is actually of 4 items. It's kind of being engraved in my mind as a professor, really. One is the teaching, which is really at the heart of being professor. And the second is the research. The third is the clinical work. And the last one is actually community service. For teaching, as I said, teaching is at the heart of being a professor. And teaching is not just being knowledgeable, skilled, and having the right attitude, but you really need to be a good communicator as well. So, there are courses which are really essential, such as train the trainer or teach the teacher, and communication skills, time management, and all these courses are really important, because professors in different parts in the world now, they get what we call revalidation. It's like every 5 years, you need to submit what proves that you are continually medically educated, if you see what I mean, and being updated, what have you. And I think that is something that is very commendable. The second item in kind of not job description, but the research. I mean, research, everyone would think of research like, oh, I have done how many publications and what have you. I think research has to be an attempt to solve the community problems health-wise. So we look at what kind of health problems we're having in the Egyptian community and try to tackle it by proper, well-designed research. It's not just publishing in worldwide journal, but actually knowing what your problem in the local community and how to overcome it through research. And the third is the clinical work. I think most of professors are really interested in this because it has to do with daily life and private practice and what have you. But so I wouldn't really elaborate more on the clinical practice. But the last one is community service. We serve the community by tackling the health issues, knowing what we actually have and how to overcome it, doing a research, teaching the medical student. That's a community service. But also we have community service like going for remote areas where there isn't a good healthcare service. And we usually in the university we send professors and staff to remote areas like in Saloum, Halayb, Shalatim, for example, and very remote areas, very remote villages in different governorates in order to actually help the people and treat their illness. So these are the 4 items that every professor has to have engraved in mind, and that would make that kind of professor very focused on what he or she have to do.
Great. So after the curriculum and the assessments, and of course we have mentioned the students and the professors, how the environment plays a role in the modern medical education?
The environment, although it's actually mentioned as the last one, but not the least, because as I said, environment is really an essential cornerstone for the students to reach the pinnacle of the teaching. By environment, I mean 2 things. The physical environment, meaning the number of students in the classroom, for example, the ventilation in the room or on the room where education is conducted, the lighting in the room, that is physical environment. But there is actually what I would like to call it figurative environment, which is the environment of collaboration, the environment of competition, the environment of reward. Because if you reward the high achievers, they would actually work even harder. And I think this environment, you could have the best building in the world, you could have the best laboratory in the world, but in the end, the outcome of yours, which is really good medical students, is not as you would like it to be. But I think if we encourage an environment of competition, an environment of collaboration, an environment of multidisciplinary team, an environment of reward, I think that would help a lot. And don't forget that medical student is not really, I would not call a medical student as being Egyptian graduate. It's actually international graduate. We compete with the whole world. So if you go and work in any part in the world, then you really need to be up to that standard.
And actually in our work, technology now plays a very important role in all aspects, and you have touched upon this in some pillars, as it plays a part in the assessment, plays a part in the way professors and students search for the information and how can they analyze the information in front of all the huge number of studies that are released every year. So how technology plays a role in modern education?
Well, I thank you for this question. Actually, it's a really good question. I may have not touched on the medical students have to be really armed with a good command of the English language. Not for the sake of English language, but actually it is the vehicle through which the information is actually imparted onto others and transferred from one place to another. And the other thing is the computer technology, which includes all different types, information technology and internet, and artificial intelligence is really at the heart of the medical profession now. I think every one of us have to be versatile and keeping abreast with artificial intelligence, because it's not going to change. Artificial intelligence is here to stay, and I'm sure is not going to change the face of the medical profession in the years to come. So medical students have to be really versatile with all of this in order to catch up with the new in the profession.
Okay, so you are in the heart of the teaching process. So what are the challenges you really face in medical education?
Well, I've touched a bit on some of these challenges, which is the abundance of information and how to deal with it, and how we have a real problem with this, because on a daily basis you have like 20 articles being published in the field of ENT, for example, and the really challenge is, out of all this information, let alone that you would have time to read them, which one would you actually take in and apply in your practice, and which one you would leave out? And I think that's a really challenge. So the abundance of information is a challenge. There are other challenges, like, as I said, the having the time, the work-life balance for the staff in medicine. You really need to weigh out strike this balance right. You have a family, but you really need to keep updated as well. So is one of the challenge, and unless one has the right mindset toward the medical profession, I think one might go astray if this is not clearly engraved in their minds. Also, I think realistically as well is the balance between the financial reward and also the giving the time to the medical profession. So I think we have really challenges in terms of the abundance of information, work-life balance, and also the financial reward.
And what would you advise professors and students to overcome these challenges?
Well, as I said, the new with the integrated medical education, as I said, for the abundance of information, we teach the students to be self-reliable in terms of self-directed learning, in terms of problem-based learning, and also, how to, analyze a piece of research. And that would arm them with the basics of understanding the newly gained information. In terms of the work-life balance, I think that is something that everyone has to really sort it out in their own way. But that's about it.
Yes, of course. Of course, they will remain challenges, but with persistence and with thinking of different ways, of course, every challenge will have its own solutions. My final thing, I want to ask you about the medical education environment in Egypt. How do you see it, and are you optimistic about it?
I am actually optimistic. Partly that is by virtue of my nature as an optimist. And the other thing, I think there are things that have been done on the ground to really make me optimistic. I think, to just mention one of them is the National Authority for Quality Assurance and Accreditation. I think that is really important. Any medical school now, they have to really pass they have to be approved by the National Authority of Quality Assurance and Accreditation in order for them to carry on functioning. By the way, initially I thought it's going to be optional, but it turned out to be obligatory, and I think that is really important milestone to really help the check and balance of the medical education in Egypt. There are other organizations such as the Supreme Council of Health in Egypt, which has been actually there for a few years now. And I think although this looks after the healthcare service within the hospitals in Egypt, but it's still probably I take it as the other face of the coin for medical education. And I think these organizations would, with time, make a tremendous difference towards the improvement of medical education and medical care as well.
Thank you so much, Professor, for being our guest in this episode. And if you have any final notes you want to add.
No, I thank you very much, and I look forward to having another interview actually in this interesting subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone who followed this episode. And we had the pleasure of hosting Professor Ali Mahrouz, Professor of Otology and Neurology, and he is also the chairman of ENT department at Al Azhar University. Thank you so much.